I've been in journalism for the last 36 years. I got into the profession when I was 20 years old, and that was in 1988. So before you try to do some calculations and try to understand what my age is, I better tell you that I'm 56 years old. So that is all not problem for now. You don't have to do many calculations. The reason that I introduced this 1, 2, 3 when I walked up the stage is to raise a concern in the world today. All of you, most of you, may partly or fully agree with me when I say that the attention spans have decreased over a period of time. Decreased drastically. But you know what? Only when you listen, you can be heard. If you do not listen, you will not be heard. While attention span is a concern, it mostly is technology driven. That's because of technology, we've come to a situation where our attention span has come down. But you will agree with me when I say that your human spirit and nature can overcome technology to retain your individual human nature and be a listener and at the same time be heard. It was 12 midnight one day, or rather I should say one night. I was at my office, the phone rang. In a newspaper office, this is the busiest time because let's say at 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock in journalism parlance, we call this, we put the edition to bed. That means we close the pages and the printing begins, and by 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock, the edition is printed and there it goes all over. So 12 midnight was definitely a very busy time for me. But the phone rang. Number one is, that was no time to take a call because nobody, I believed, had any business and such urgency to call on the phone a newspaper office to talk to somebody at 12 in the night. I quickly sent my report, but somehow I felt that I should pay attention to this telephone call, which I did. The person at the other end had a condition. He just said 3, 4 words. Do not ask for my identity. Well, I said, okay. We had a conversation, a long conversation, and I heard him. I heard him for as long as he was speaking with me. The reason that I heard him was, he just took those 3, 4 seconds to say, to tell me, to direct me, that I should not be inquisitive about his identity, but if I was interested in listening to something that he wanted to tell me, out of national interest, I could hear. Thanks to that person, what I did was, I heard him. He did not give me his number. There were no mobile phones really in usage at the time. We had conversations over a period of time. The result was astounding. Some of the information that he gave me pertained to certain defense-related matters, which I published in the newspaper. They had an echo in Parliament. The government of India took notice of it. I'm just saying it took notice of it because partly it was denied, though partly it was correct. Those gallantry medals, we are also appreciative of them, isn't it? And the families are appreciative of that. And those individuals simply love the fact that they've been recognized for their brilliance. tragedy was that the medals that they were supposed to get were not being given to them. The medal is announced, but the medal is not given. And these were not given for several years. I knew a friend who lived in the US, but he followed defense very keenly. I said, see, this is what seems to be happening. Is this true? Then he said, what are you talking? It is true. And he gave me some websites where these medals were sold online. So even if you are not a recipient of the medal, you could simply go online and buy this medal. Whereas the real recipient, the man who has been honored with that medal, is not getting it from the government. To expose something like this that was happening, the other person in the US, he guided me and said, there are 2 places in Hyderabad where these medals are openly sold. Okay, they are replicas. I can't call them fake, but they are replicas. So what these soldiers do, army personnel do, those who are recipients of the medals, they go to these shops, just pay some money and buy a medal and keep it with them, show to their families, they are happy. The real medal that they are supposed to get from the government does not come to them. Well, if part of my reports earlier were rubbished, here was concrete proof because I went to those shops. By the way, just for information, I'm telling you, one such shop is at Nampally, and a few shops are there at Trimalgiri in Hyderabad. So I went from shop to shop, and I said, are these available? They were more than willing to give me those medals. More than willing to give me those medals. So I bought those medals. I bought some army uniform also. I know I surely knew that they would never even have been able to imagine that I would have been in the army because of my personality. Alright, so I bought some army clothes for myself, and those medals were important, and I published a report. Huge amounts were spent, but something that had to happen, happened. Why did it happen? It was because I answered that midnight call. I heard, and when I wrote about it, somebody else heard it, and somebody else took action on it. In this scenario, no individual can claim credit. You listen, you will be heard. Much like how it happens in our brain as the synapses happens. There is a presynaptic neuron, there is a postsynaptic neuron. One passes on information to the other receives it. But I would rather want to focus that little portion in between those 2 neurons. It's called the synaptic gap. Let me take a minute to dwell on this synaptic gap. These 2 neurons do not come together. They respect one another. One gives information, one takes it, but there is no overlap. Friends, when I'm saying you listen and you be heard, and you have very little time for that, just a few seconds. How many times, let's say in an office situation, in a discussion, there will be an overlap of conversations. Somebody's thought, somebody's train of thought is interrupted by another person who is in a tearing hurry to speak something that has just popped up or cropped up in his mind. Are we not killing another thought and idea by interrupting somebody? Let's not go too far as it being in an office situation. Even when friends have a conversation, even in a family situation, ideally, I would suggest you listen, you hear, you understand, you assimilate, you digest, and then when all this happens, when you speak, you will be heard. years ago, I was going through Twitter and I found a small tweet by somebody. He said, "Please save me." No, she said, "Please save me." Well, I was zapped. Who was this person who seemed to be so much in danger of something? I started off a conversation on Twitter. This person said, "Sir, I am along the border of Saudi Arabia and Yemen, and the place where I am now is being bombed. I can see bombs being hurled here." He explained to me the situation. This person was really in a dangerous zone. He was trafficked to that place and he was placed in that particular border area. And what was happening was, he had to take care of the cattle, camels, and left to himself a dangerous situation. Those few seconds of me reading what he said, listening to him talk, it changed the entire scenario. Then the person came out with his real identity. He said, "Sir, I've used a wrong name. I used a female name, but I'm actually a man. And I hail from one of the Telugu states. I'm a Telugu person, so this is my situation." I heard him, this man telling me his story from the desert. I paid attention to him. I wrote about him. And finally what happened was, a very good thing happened. When I wrote about it in the newspaper, I was heard by somebody, the Ministry of External Affairs, and this person was rescued from that place and brought back home. Only because I was able to pay attention to what he was speaking, the few seconds that he took to make me understand his problem. So this happens when you pay attention and you speak. In journalism, what happens is, you are taught to convey in the least possible time all the details. Most of you may have heard of 5 W's and 1 H. Now, that no longer pertains to journalism, because when you're talking, you have to say what happened, when did it happen, where did it happen, why did it happen, to who did this happen, and how did this happen. That is the situation. And I want to tell you one thing. I was sitting with Abdul Kalam one day, and Abdul Kalam and I were sitting in a school beside each other. Children were going. He would just pull the students and ask one question. "Hey guy, what do you want to become?" I almost asked him, "What do you want to become?" because he had already served as advisor to Raksha Mantri. He was going to lead a retired life. In 15 days, he got a call. He became the President of India. Thank you so much for listening to me.